Hallo und herzlich willkommen, meine lieben Freunde, hier zu einem neuen Video, auf das ich mich schon lange sehr freue. Genau wie schon vor ein paar Wochen zusammen mit Bene, habe ich auch zusammen mit dem lieben Owen ein Video gemacht, bei dem es ums Thema Draftliga geht. Ein ähnliches Draft-Bootcamp, aber mit anderen Erkenntnissen. Der Owen ist ein wunderbarer Poketuber aus dem amerikanischen Sprachraum, das heißt, das kommende Interview ist auf Englisch. Und ich freue mich trotzdem über jeden von euch, der da bleibt und der vielleicht auch einen kurzen Kommentar da lässt, auch wenn ihr das Video nicht ganz gesehen habt. Ich finde, gerade wenn man Gäste aus Übersee dabei hat, die freuen sich, wenn man dann einen kleinen Kommentar da lässt. Der Kanal von Owen ist natürlich unten in der Videobeschreibung und ich wünsche euch jetzt ganz viel Spaß mit diesem Draftliga Bootcamp in der English Edition. Okay, and here we are. Today we are featured by Owen. Owen is an American VTuber and your channels are plugged down there in the video description, but please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I produce a lot of Draft League content over on my channel, whether that be different battles from Wi-Fi leagues showing off Galar decks formats or Showdown leagues showing off the full national decks with megas and all that fun stuff. I also do a lot of discussion videos on different concepts in the format and things like that, whether it be discussion videos from you guys or, you know, things I come up with on my own and things like that. So lots of Draft League stuff.
Owen really got it all. Like he got the tier lists. Man, I've been waiting for your tier lists to happen, so I know what to, so I know what is good or not, and it's very really all there. So please go check him out. And I immediately requested you after I found your channel for this like draft boot camp. Because you're a very experienced player. So can you tell me how many leagues have you attended so far?
Oh man. Okay, so I don't know how. It's honestly hard to say, right? I can tell you the amount of games I have, because one of the things I love about draft is I love keeping my stats. I love seeing how many kills I get with things, what my differential is, things like that, how many times I've drafted something. So I have all of my leagues on a spreadsheet that my buddy made, tracking all of the kills I have, all the different things I've drafted.
You got the spreadsheet.
100%. Now, this number I'm going to give you, it's honestly lower than what it is, because there's about 3-4 leagues that I haven't put in it yet. But my current all-time record as of the sheet is 502 wins, 255 losses. So I've been playing for a long time. I've been playing since 2017 is when I started playing. So it's been a long time.
That sounds like other people's OU stats, like just Showdown games played, but there's no Wi-Fi matches too, right?
It's a mix of both. Now, a good majority of them is on Showdown. I'd say 70% of the games are probably on Showdown.
Okay, I see.
But a good 30% of them are on Wi-Fi, and that's a lot. So.
And you always told us your win-loss ratio, but what does it mean like in results? Are you like what when you start a Showdown league, like are you certain top 3 or are you trying to play it as your team goes?
So, when I first started playing, I sucked, as everybody is, and that's kind of like the first thing you have to go into. I actually had no competitive Pokemon experience before I started playing Draft, outside of, like, Battle Squad stuff.
Oh, okay.
I remember my first game of Draft League ever, I played, and my opponent set up T-Spikes, and I had no idea what that was. And I just got smashed through. I remember I brought, like, things like Luxray and Dusclops to, like, 8 games apiece, because they did good in one game. I was really bad. But over my course of playing, and again, this is a rough estimate. I think I've made playoffs 61 times. I've made 13 finals, which shows you how much harder it gets once you get to that point. And I have won 8 total championships as of right now. I'm going into playoffs for about 2 leagues right now. So hopefully those will end up going well. But right now, 13 finals made 8 championships, and I've made playoffs 61 times.
Okay, man. Like now I'm interested. How did you even get to the point that you start with draft leagues first? Like what? Like how did you get to them? And why not just
playing on a ladder
like anybody else?
Oh man. So I didn't have much competitive Pokemon experience. I grew up playing baseball. I played baseball through my freshman year of college. And once I hit that point where I stopped playing and I stopped kind of pushing to get to that next level, it was like, oh man, what do I do? Like, I'm bored. I don't have anything to do with my time. I basically just like went to class, went to work, gym, and slept. I was really bored. And I got back into Pokemon. Now, I'd been a very casual fan for my whole life, especially when I was younger. I really enjoyed Pokemon. I didn't really play much in high school. I got back into it about my senior year. I like bought an old DS. I didn't even know what a 3DS was until I graduated high school. I didn't know it was a thing. And this was again like 2017, this year I graduated. So I
That's like an anime villain origin story. Just one day stumbling across a lost 3DS on a field, picking it up, and something awoken in you.
So that's what it was. Is I started playing Pokemon again, and again started off very casual. I was just playing through all the games I'd missed over the years. I started watching YouTube videos as most people do, and then the WBE Season 1 happened. Drive's League back in the day, and I was like, yo, this is awesome, because one, I have my sports and athletic background, and a lot of people will tell you this, it really isn't like this, but on the surface level it looks like you're playing fantasy football with Pokemon, or like playing some kind of fantasy sport where you draft your own team and you try and lead it to victory. So that level of it was like, yo, these are the two things that I like that are like polar opposites, whether it be the sports world and Pokemon, and it kind of merged them together, so it really interested me. I started playing, and I loved it. I don't think I've taken more than a month or 2 month break from playing Draft League since 2017. It is by far my favorite thing to do on my free time.
Totally feel you. Okay, so let's see what we can make out of this sentiment, out of these experiences, and you can fill my void of knowledge because I don't have that. I just want to have a good time, and now we see what we can do, and we start with the prep work. Okay, Owen, so let's say you've signed up for a draft league, or you got invited, and at what point do I even start to prepare? Like when I know my spot in the draft, or when I know the tiers, where do I even start?
So this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm always of the opinion that when you start a draft, there's not much preparation involved. Now, if you're in a top 3 pick position, the top 3 things you want, right? There's, and again, that might be something we talk about a little bit later on here, but there's usually a top defined, these are the best Pokemon in the format right now. Building a team around them would be easy. I want to use them. But if you're positioned at number 7, there's really not much preparation you can do, because that first 6 picks of the draft can go so astray, and you're so early on in the drafting process that you can't really determine what your people above you and below you are going to go for, because nobody has anything. So there's no common cores that they can go for. There's no weaknesses that they need to patch, because they don't have a team yet. So my drafting philosophy, no matter where you are on the board, and it's a bit of a combination of the two, and it depends on how serious you're taking it, is going to be drafting, either the best Pokemon left on the board or the Pokemon you want to use the most. Obviously, the best Pokemon left on the board means that I'm drafting the absolute best thing on the board, whether or not it's something I enjoy or not. The thing that I think is going to bring me the most success, if you're playing it a little bit more casually, get the thing that looks the most fun to you, that you think you could build the most fun team around, and that you would enjoy playing with. And there might be a little bit of overlap in the two. Like, say I'm playing in a league and Dragapult is the objective best thing on the board, which we'll talk about. It's probably just, dominating Pokemon in both formats, whether it be Galadex and Natdex. But say I drafted Dragapult in my last league, I just used it for 12 weeks and I'm bored, and I want to use Urshifu. I'm going to draft Urshifu instead. That kind of thing. So really it is taking what's best left available to you on the board. And then when we get into round 2, 3, 4 is when we start pivoting and planning and kind of meticulously approaching how we're going to draft our team.
Okay. So would you say there's a difference between starting very early, where you make a plan, where you say you're 1 to 4th, and you make a plan there because okay, I might not get the Dragapult, but I get XY. Then there's say a middle section from 5 to 8 where you say just wing it. And then what interests me too is because I'm affected by that. What's when you're really late? What's when you 10th, 11th, 12th?
Yeah. So like I said, being picked 1 through 3, 1 through 4, something like that is always ideal. It's gonna be nice. You're guaranteed to get a top 5 mod in the format as long as you somewhat have a grasp on what you're doing. You always get something really cool, which is fun. You can ask any draft league player about this. That middle portion of the draft is it's hell. It is not where you want to be whatsoever in any stretch of the imagination. You might get a good Pokemon, but you're waiting a long time for you to get your first pick. Then you have to wait for the draft to go all the way back and back around, and you're still stuck in the middle. When you're at the front and at the back, you have a little bit more leeway where you can pick your Pokemon a lot closer together. It leads to less snipes, and it leads to more cohesive cores a lot of the time. Now, you can still draft a great team in the middle, but it's going to be a little bit tougher, and you're not going to get as many crazy things as you'd like. Back wheel, I know some people who prefer having that back end, that 12th pick out of 12, or if you're playing a 16-person league, that 16th pick, because you might not get a meta-defining Pokemon, but you're going to get something good. There's more than enough Pokemon for, the 12th pick to be something that you can very viably build a championship team around. And on top of that, you can immediately pick from the pool the best possible partner for it. The downside to being at the front half is you're not getting a top-end second-round pick most of the time unless, something falls through the cracks, which can obviously definitely happen. I've gotten pick 8 Garchomps and pick 20 Celesteelas and things like that before. So, there's definitely some things that fall through the crack, but it's always preferable to be towards that front half or that back half, because when it comes back to you, you're going to have less pieces or less time to have to wait in between picks, and you're going to be able to build more cohesive cores and things like that.
Okay, so in, like for a beginner like me, we can imagine a wave, where in the beginning it's all good, then comes a huge spike of you're fucked, and then you end up in the tail of good again. Okay, exactly. Man, I see. Now I'm happy that I'm 12. Now I just only gotta figure together my perfect core from the garbage table.
Exactly.
This will be some chemistry shit. Okay. So let's talk about cores, because you already talked about them, how important it is to get at least 2 months together that really work fine. Tell me a bit about what do you look for specific Pokemon? Do you go the fire, water, grass core, and what are you looking for when trying to fit Pokemon together? So
yeah, this is a really loaded question, because a lot of the time when we first start out, I remember when I first started Draft League, right? And especially back in the day, when it was the earlier day, not even the earlier days of draft, but just drafts has grown so much as a meta over the last, 4 years since I've been playing. You hear things like Fire, Water, Grass core, Dragon, Fairy, Steel core, and they're great, but a lot of the time people feel pigeonholed into drafting those cores, when in reality, the reason that those typings are traditional cores is because it's an easy way to explain to newer players that these Pokemon cover each other's weaknesses well. Now, it's not always that you necessarily need to get a Dragon, Fairy, Steel, Fire, Water, Grass. For example, perfect example is getting a Grass type, right? There are some, and I just did a Grass type tier list video, and I didn't realize it until I sat down and looked at all of them. A lot of them suck, man. There's 10 of them that are good at the top, and then a lot of them I'm just man, that's not worth drafting for me, because while it might occupy a slot on the bench, is it really fulfilling the role that you need? And one of the main rules that you need out of a grass type is you need a solid ground resist in this format, when there's so many solid offensive grounds, and you're going to be playing a ground every week pretty much. There's no team that won't have a ground type if constructed properly. If you don't have a ground resist, you're gonna have a bad time. But that doesn't necessarily mean grass type. I've drafted so many teams where I've drafted Buzzwole over any grass on my build, because Buzzwole just functioned better than everything else on the team, or left on the board, and it functioned better with my team. So that's an important thing when it comes to cores. I think it's important to approach it, especially early on in the draft, right? Say I get Urshifu. I have second pick overall. The draft goes all the way back, and then it comes back to me. And then that second pick should be okay, I drafted Urshifu. This is going to be my main centerpiece. This is going to be how I facilitate wins and end games and things like that. It's a great Pokemon, but what beats it? What is going to stand in the way of my Urshifu? Which traditionally, especially in this format, is going to be fatter fairies, right? That's especially with something as broken as Urshifu. It's going to be fatter fairies. So typically, one of my favorite cores in draft ever is Urshifu plus Gengar. Absolutely love the core, because Urshifu facilitates great switch-ins for something like Gengar. U-turns in and out on those fairies coming in. You get to click a free button, and Gengar loves its free switch-ins. And Urshifu can switch in and pivot in on some of the things that Gengar doesn't appreciate as well. So they pair phenomenally offensively, and you can do the same thing defensively with different cores. Say I have, and again, this is a very optimistic, but I almost got it a couple days ago, core, and say you get Tornadus Therian, which is probably seen as the third best Pokemon in the format, right? Traditionally, you get a Tornadus Therian, and then you want to come back around, and you can grab something like a Galarian Slowking, because one, they pair, you get that Regenerator core, and again, this is very optimistic, because Slowking usually goes early round 2, but you get that solid defensive core. Torn covers that ground weakness for Slowking, and things like that, so it really, they kind of pair together well and things like that. Or you might even get a Zero Aura if for some reason falls, having that electric immunity alongside Torn, a good Volt Turn core, things like that. So it's really figuring out what is my team weak to, and what do I need to patch that weakness is the best approach to drafting a team that's cohesive.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And you talked about different types of cores too. We have to regenerate a course, where you just try not to die. You're switching around forever. I hate that shit. And you got the classic Votorn course. So there's also a differentiation between do I want to go for something offensive as the backbone of my team, or more defensive? Like what do you say from your experience is more successful, like in your general draft league?
So, objectively speaking, and again, there's a little bit of a caveat to this too, but objectively speaking, balance is probably the best playstyle. It is the most consistent, and it's the most flexible in matchups. However, you should not play a playstyle that you do not feel comfortable with or you do not enjoy playing. Prime example is there's stall is actually typically really bad in draft league, because in a counter team format where you know what your opponent has, it's very easy to formulate good breakers. There's plenty of taunt, plenty of hazard control, and ways to beat these fat mons. Where on the OU ladder, I'm not prepping for Mega Sableye, so maybe I don't have anything to break Mega Sableye. But if I have these these special facilitated breakers and ways to beat down these teams, it's a lot easier to beat these one-dimensional teams in stall. But there's definitely players in the Showdown community, especially that are just phenomenal with their stall builds and incredibly creative preppers and builders and things like that. Whereas I think that's an objectively inferior playstyle to like balance, bulky offense, even hyper offense in some instances. If you're playing a playstyle you're comfortable with and you're experienced enough in that playstyle, I think you should always go with that. But again, balance is probably your best bet. Again, like regen spam, fat teams, things like that with their 1 to 2 breakers in the back that we're getting free U-turns and volts into, is always going to perform consistently as long as you position well.
Okay, and you also gave 2 examples, but like let's say what's for all the players that look this in preparation of like an old gen then, old Gen 8 draft league, be it NetX, let's say it's NetX. Okay, what's to you the perfect core to draft in NetX draft league?
So obviously there's some pretty insane things that you can do, provided the people around you don't really know what they're doing, right? However, if we're going like realistic cores that we can potentially get, we'll start off with the best Pokemon in the format, which is probably something like a Dragapult, which is great in OU, right? It's a very solid Pokemon, but in draft, it really, really shines with its versatility, move pool, speed tier especially. It's an incredible Pokemon, and is banned in, I'd say it's about a 50-50 whether or not it's banned in NatDex leagues, depending on the player base and what their decision on. It's been a big point of contention throughout the generation. But say we have something like Dragapult, then on the way back around, if you're first overall pick and you get those 2 picks back to back, you want something that breaks down fatter fairies, which I think is really important for Pult. Obviously, just throwing off big Dracos, especially in specs variants and things like that. So you can grab a good offensive fighting or a good offensive steal, whether that be something like a Nidoking or a Mega Scizor is another great pairing with Dragapult or something like that. And then on top of that, we want something to break down the fat normals and dark types that are going to resist the Ghost Stab from Dragapult. Whether that be something like a Mega Glade would be an incredible pairing if you ever got around to that, or something like a Buzzwole. Mega Medicham that's actually much more attainable. So we're going to say, for purpose of this video, my perfect core if I was starting out, and something I think I could viably get, would be Dragapult, Mega Medicham, and Nidoking. I think that would be a phenomenal offensive start to a draft.
Okay, I see. That's what we are going for. Okay. So now that we got this in the bag, let's start with the draft. Okay, so now we are sitting in the live draft. Just started, maybe some short introduction, and like live drafts have something about them where they can turn very hectic, like in a matter of seconds. And like let's start with a light-hearted question. Like, can you like imagine a situation where a snipe happened or something else? Were you still salty about it?
Oh man. So I was playing in a league. I don't even know how long it was. It was within the year. It was like maybe 6 months ago. It was a league called Pack. And it's predicated on your CCS score, which is an online metric that Wi-Fi leagues typically use to like see how you've done. You have to have a certain score to be invited to the league. I made semis the season before, so we did well in it, and came around to the draft, and I wanted to recreate a core that I had in an NCP championship run that I had, which was Latios plus Sand, Latios plus Drill and Gigalith. So round 1 comes along to me. I'm towards the back half of the draft, and Lottie falls. I'm like, oh, perfect. Love using this thing. So I draft Latios. Round 2 comes back around, and I draft Excadrill on the way back. So I'm kind of telegraphing what I want, but at the same time, if you're not drafting Drill, you're typically not drafting Sand offense, right? In draft. Now, T-Tar might get drafted because T-Tar is a great Pokemon, but you're not drafting it for sand, and I'm not even looking at T-Tar. I want the budget out of Gigalith, and I'm thinking Gigalith in round 6, 7 because it's typically where it's valued at. It's a mid-tier Pokemon and it fits on very specific teams. So I'm going through. Round 3 happens. I think I actually picked up Dracovish. It was the first time I was going to get to use it. I was really excited to try it out, especially on my sand. To be able to flex between Strong Jaw and Sand Rush and force that much prep was great. And then round 4 comes along, and every single sand setter went that round right after me.
Every single one, no!
Every single one. Whether it be T-Tar after me, I expected it, whatever. Then Hippo went to like some fatter balanced team, and it made sense. I'm also not a big fan of Hippo, so I'm fine with that. But round 4, Gigalith came around. It got sniped, and I DM'd the dude. I was like, yo, we worked something out. Like, why are you drafting Gigalith? It doesn't fit. And I swear to God, he said, I just didn't want you to get it.
Oh, no.
And
that's so
spiteful.
That's so hateful.
Yep. And then the last round of the draft, I drafted Hippopotas as a 1-point mon. Never once bought it. It was there to force prep because it sucks. And I knew it wasn't going to. So I wanted people to think I might bring Sandro. I brought like Scarf Mold Breaker 70% of the games. I think I brought leftovers a couple times. It just oh man, no. it was brutal. I don't think I've ever been as upset about a snipe in that
live drafts can be that brutal, exactly. And even if it's not like a specific archetype, but just the Pokemon with all the right abilities and with all the right typing that you really wanted. Tell us about the dynamic when you're seeing this mon being sniped from you, what are you thinking, and what are your first steps to prepare for, or to get the snipe out of your head and get the second best mon?
Yeah, so a lot of times where I think people fail in this instance is they'll see X Pokemon get sniped and oh man, I need to replace that typing on my draft. A lot like we taught, people kind of get pigeonholed into this typing does this, where the Pokemon in that role might be incredibly subpar at doing so. So let's take an instance where we were trying to get our dream core. We had first pick overall, we got Dragapult, and then on the way back, we saw that Mega Galay got taken, right? And we really wanted Mega Galay with our team. Nidoking's still there. So what we do is we get back, we have Dragapult, we're gonna get Nidoking, but we need a replacement for the Mega Galay, or the Mega Medi, sorry, is what our example was. We really wanted a replacement for that Mega Medi. If we look at the board, there's a million other fighting types, obviously, right? But to find the best one, we need to find the things that Medi did well for us. One, it's speed tier in 100. It's really important to have balanced speed tiers throughout your draft so your opponents can't run Adamant and Modest versus you very freely because your speeds are spread out. I played a team recently that speed tiers went from 95 base speed to 65, and I got to run an Adamant or a Modest max HP Nidoking in the matchup because of it. So we want to make sure our speed tiers are nice and spaced across so that 100 is always a nice tier to get. We're going to grab that. Then, what was Medi doing for our team? It was breaking through Fat Normals and Darks to facilitate Dragapult endgames, and Dragapult was breaking through the Fat Psychics that it didn't like. What's the next best thing on the board that fits that role? We could go Buzzwole. It's a bit slow, plays a little bit more defensively, or we could get Galarian Zapdos. Same exact speed tier, not as strong as Medi as a breaker, but it offers us a little bit of momentum in that same speed tier that we wanted.
Okay, so you're not really looking at the typings as much as you look on the role the Pokemon occupied. Exactly,
right? So we're looking at the role, and often, like in that example, it did work out that way, right? They were the same typings because typically these Pokemon function similarly with the same typings in their stat spreads and things like that, especially at the top end of the draft. So I think it's really important to do so, right? Is covering those weaknesses in that way. If we need physically defensive fighting resist and our fairy that we want to get sniped, maybe we don't draft Slurpuff as our replacement because it's not the bulkiest fairy in the world. Maybe we get something like an Aromatisse or something like that in the back. That makes sense.
Yeah, I can totally see this. Now, as you mentioned in your anecdote, some snipes are kind of telegraphed. Like you talked about the Hippowdon on the balance team, or just seeing other people drafting whether that you want to play. What are you looking at while the draft is happening in your opponent's teams, for example, to maybe see these snipes before them happen? What can we do to pay extra attention within the draft to make better decisions?
Yeah, so a lot of the times you're not going to have the wheel pick like we've kind of been theorizing, right? Whether it be first, 12, 16, whatever your end of your league is, right? Yeah. So that means we're only going to be picking one Pokemon at a time, and depending where we're at, we might have a plan down, right? Where we want to get 2 different Pokemon, but obviously either of them getting sniped is pretty tough. Say I really want to get, let's think of an example. I really want to draft Starmie for my team, right? But I look behind me, I have the 4th pick and it's going on the way back up. The people who are 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, they all have their water type, right? So feasibly, it's much less likely for them to draft Starmie. But say I also want Rotom Heat, and none of them have that ground immunity, or a couple of them don't have that ground immunity. A couple of them don't have that hazard control or that fire type. If a Pokemon feasibly fits behind you and another one doesn't really fit on opposing teams, you can typically push those back and draft a little bit more efficiently, if that makes any sense. So it's looking at what your opponents or what your fellow league members' teams are and making calculated decisions on, does this fit their team? Can they viably take this from me? No? Then okay. Or like in Natdex, say it gets to round 6 and you haven't drafted a Mega Pokemon and every single other coach has drafted their Mega, you don't need to pick that until the end of the draft because you can't be sniped. So even if it's a Pokemon you really want, just aptly budget, make sure you have 14 points left over so you can draft Mega Charizard Y at the end.
Yeah, that's actually something I haven't considered yet. Like, obviously, it totally makes sense. Like, when they got their Mega Pokemon, and even when you see, okay, they got an S-tier pick free, and even their Mega slot, there is a good Mega that they will go for that, and they will not go for, like, I don't know, Mega Ordino or what the fuck you want to play. Like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, to look at what they got and what not. And, yeah, like from that talk, like I got the feeling that it's very much more about experience and about like knowing what's good and what works for you than just reaction time.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something you think we can do to prepare for snipes, like laying out a 2nd or a 3rd like Pokemon in line, or would you really say, okay, take your time, maybe ask for a minute or two in a live draft to pick a Pokemon spontaneously?
Yeah, so I think it's great, especially if you're doing something like a live draft, in the sense that like you have 10 minutes on your time. That's incredibly stressful, and especially if you get sniped there, I think it's very important to have backups lined up, or even completely separate draft plans, right? Because say I do want Mega Medicham or Zapdos on my team. Say they both go. That's a very viable thing to happen, and the next best thing on the board is something like Buzzwole, right? And Buzzwole doesn't offer me that same speed tier, or that momentum, or whatever Medi and Zapdos might give me. So my entire draft plan might change in that moment, because I need to drop this Pokemon in order to pick this up and things like that. So it's not even necessarily just having backups. If Pokemon are different enough to where this is my first option, but the second option just doesn't fit that same role as this, you realistically might need to change up that entire draft plan and kind of pivot around. So having multiple draft plans and being able to pivot between the two is a very, very nice thing to potentially be able to do. So preparation beforehand in a live draft situation is definitely going to be incredibly important.
Yeah, I think even for beginners, this is especially true to not get in the situation where you are forced into your not so good Pokemon knowledge. Like in my case, it's quite good, but even I miss some things. So like one last thing I wanted to talk about, like in this draft situation, is like I witnessed like many drafts where, especially when we talk about the late rounds and we talk about your low tier picks, like where they struggle to find something that really gives value to them. And I've seen you talk a surprising amount of times about Stunfisk, like Flunschlick in Deutsch. Like tell us what's so good about Flunschlick that it makes you talk about it so much.
Oh man, so in general, your lower tier picks, it's all going to be about finding value, right? That's drafting in general, is finding app value to have a cohesive team with the best Pokemon possible. And Stunfisk offers a ton of value, right? First off, it's incredibly anti-meta in the sense that it checks a lot of top-tier Pokemon incredibly well for its price point. Whether that be the top-tier Electrics in Zera, Zapdos, and Koko. It checks them phenomenally. It is one of the biggest hard stops for those Pokemon, which is great. It even checks more niche Pokemon like Celesteela and Mega Pidgeot, things like that. It's great for those top tier Pokemon. Static is a great ability in Draft League, especially for those U-turning teams that are going to try and grab momentum. Staticking and Rocky Helmeting them is great. It checks another great Pokemon too in Mega Scizor. It's a phenomenal Scizor check with Foul Play and Static and Rocky Helmet and things like that. It can check it phenomenally. So being anti-meta at that price point is phenomenal. But it also offers essential roles to your team in having a ground type, having a solid stealth rocker, things like that. So it's so good for the value that it offers at the price point that it is found at. And if you have that ridiculously flying weak team, then Stunfisk is going to be a great pickup for you. I've actually seen, I remember back in Gen 7, Stunfisk was typically in like a points draft, right? Where say 19 points is the most and 1 is the least. I used to see Stunfisk going for like 3-4 points. I just looked at a doc in a league that I just recently played in, and it was as high as 8 points, because people are really starting to, you know, over this last generation, catch on to the value that something with its defensive typing and abilities and things like that and stat spread does. And it's not going to be an immovable wall, right? It's very slow, it's taunt fodder, it can get toxic, it can get whittled down very, very fast, but it's going to do its job and do it very well every week.
Yeah, it's so good to see like such a Pokemon that was like kind of memed about, like actually gets some value.
Oh yeah,
and
that's what's beautiful
just as recently as last week, like I saw on a video from a German PokeTuber who played Stunfisk, like I think for the very first time, and he was like surprised by how much the thing can do. Like it's really not that bad that people make it off. And yeah, I hear it again. I hear rolls, like look for rolls, and I hear value. Obviously, you want something that can do something for your team, and not just like be a fucking, I don't know, lick-a-tongue. Okay, so at this point, like I think we got it all, man. We got the preparation done, we got the draft done, and I think this video, like as a resource, is incredibly helpful for beginners like me to prepare for a draft. And like this video would, this whole recording session would be super helpful to me for my first draft, if it would not have happened already. Like that's the confession I gotta make to you. Like the draft was like a solid week ago.
Oh no!
Because I didn't want to like get a head start on my friends, man, in this fun league, because it is a for fun league and we are all good friends in it. I record this after, so I don't have this advantage. And now we are on the good spot that I can show you my team and have you react to it, and hear what you have to talk about it and what my common weaknesses are. And I think we do this in a separate video that comes right after this, just because it's very dated, like with the team. And I say, Owen, man, thank you so much for taking your time with us. Thank you so much for elaborating. I think this will be great for beginners like me to really catch up on the draft format. And if you have any last words, now is the time for it.
Again, I appreciate you having me. I could sit and talk about draft forever. It's something I really enjoy doing, obviously. With the the knowledge that we're spitting and things like that. Usually people don't go this in depth about something like as niche as Draft League Pokemon. But if it is something that interests you and you're not too familiar with the format, humble flex, I do think that my channel is a really good resource for really explaining a lot of these concepts and going a lot more in depth and things like that. We have a new generation of games coming out, so you can come and navigate that with me, and we'll figure out what's good in the format and things like that. And if you want to come check me out, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, no need to be humble, bro. I think your channel is a hidden gem, and I think I've learned very much from it, just looking at your videos like everybody else could, like in preparation. And obviously, like your stuff is plugged below. Check Owen out, and we see each other in the team review. Bye bye.